The traders I work with, like I will see that they're burned out, but in their minds, what they're saying is, why can't I cover everything on my to-do list? Why amn't I being effective enough? Why amn't I getting it done? Why don't I have the results? I have all of these things I want to achieve, and there's a gap between where I am and what I want to achieve. So how do I close it? The solution is actually taking more off their plate, and that would actually free them up to perform at a much higher level.
Joining us from somewhere in Ireland, Créde Sheehy-Kelly. Créde, how are you?
Delighted to be back on again. So I'm a high performance psychologist, but I specialize in coaching traders and online entrepreneurs. I don't teach anything on the technical side of trading. It's all on how to master your mindset for peak performance. And so my background is qualified as a sports psychologist and worked in elite sport for years, and then kind of moved into the trading arena. And now I spend most of my time pretty much working with traders to help them become more disciplined and consistent in the market.
One of the things that happens to me at the end of the year, as we get closer to the holidays, I don't want to say I get tired, but I get tired, right? We do the same thing every day, every morning, and then I do the same thing every afternoon as part of my research and stuff. Vacation is coming up. I'm going to take some time off. I know I'm going to hit the street running in January, but for traders, there's a thing called the daily grind, and that's something that we need to be prepared how to handle.
Whether it's trading or sport or business or any arena, I think this time of year is definitely a time where people need the break. And sometimes traders in particular, or people who are very, A-type personality, high achievers, sometimes they don't prioritize the break as much as they need to for peak performance. That periodization of performance, so having intense periods of focus and then actually taking downtime and shutting off, is really important for peak performance. It's funny, even you're saying, I'm not tired, but I'm tired. Sometimes even people feel a bit funny about saying that they need the break. From a high performance perspective, it's absolutely necessary. And it is actually a good idea to shut off as much as possible for a week or whatever time you designate for it.
Is this something that I should be doing periodically? At least over here in States, folks tend to save their vacation time or their PTO, whatever you want to call it. You save it, you bank it, and then you take a longer period of time. Maybe if you have kids, you'll do a spring break thing. But should there be a regular cycle of rest?
That's a great question. What I would say is there's kind of the macro level of taking the actual vacation days and, switching off fully. And that's really important. Even when they take it, a lot of people don't actually switch off for that. They're maybe checking the markets or they're doing a little bit of trading or that kind of thing. So it's important to really fully give yourself the time to switch off whenever you take that. The approach, at least, that I would encourage people to take in the day-to-day is to build in more downtime and periods of lesser intensity throughout the year. It's not as black and white as either I'm working really hard or I'm on vacation, but actually sort of stripping back the level of intensity sometimes in your day-to-day or week-to-week life. So just to give a concrete example of that, on a coaching session recently, I was talking to someone who was finding they were mentally fatigued on Thursday and Friday come the end of the week in their trading, and that was impacting their trading and they were breaking the rules because of it. And we spoke about that person was actually doing like extra research and reading and learning, like watching YouTube videos and all that throughout the week, every single day, thinking that it would help their trading. But we actually figured out that that was impacting their mental energy. And so by the end of the week, what they were gaining in terms of learning and doing research was actually starting to impact them at, if you want to call it, competition time, when they have to turn up and perform and execute in their trading. And so they stripped that back and they found that they then had higher energy levels at the end of the week. So it can be something as small as that.
That makes sense. And I found myself doing great Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, even Thursday. And then by Friday, sometimes I develop this nonchalant attitude like, we'll see what happens. And I know that's either don't trade that day or don't have that attitude, but it just happens sometimes.
So one really simple thing that I would encourage people to do is rate your PEMs every day. So this is your physical, emotional, and mental state out of 10. And you do it every single day before you trade, win or lose. And what that's doing is just giving you a baseline, like a check-in with yourself, a bit of self-awareness in the morning to know what state you're in. So it could be that you get to Friday and maybe mentally and emotionally, physically, maybe, you've run out of your physical energy for the week and your scores are low. That would be an indication then that either it's a day not to trade if they were really low, or else just to be more vigilant about the possibility for breaking your rules or emotion-based trading. For some people, it could be that a score of 5 or less means that they shouldn't trade. Whereas for someone else, it could even be 6 or less. So it's kind of about doing this over time and creating patterns of data and then understanding the link between, okay, this day that I broke my rules, this day that I moved my stop, or all of the days that I move my stops, I tend to be lower on an emotional rating. So there's a link here. So let me be more wary. When I score myself lower in the morning before I've ever entered the market, I know that I have a potential heightened tendency to remove my stop loss, for example. The power of it is really in tracking the data over time and understanding what the patterns are for you.
Yeah, and that's a discipline, right? A lot of people, including me, you have to really, really focus on being that disciplined, right? Writing something down on a piece of paper to kind of gauge where you're at mentally. That takes a lot of discipline.
It's like creating a new habit. When you actually think about it, something quite simple, it takes probably less than a minute to do. It sounds like such a simple exercise, but it really can save you some days where you would have entered the market and gone on tilt.
Have you ever heard this phrase, 21 days makes a habit?
I have heard it and I'm going to bust it. It's not true. There has been research done around habit formation, and I think the 21 days, unfortunately, isn't true. It takes a good bit longer than that to really bed it in. I think if you get 21 days under your belt, you're doing very well. But there's some research that says it's 8 months. There's some research that says it's like 70 something days. Developing habits, it's really about picking one thing that's going to be impactful and then giving your laser focused attention to that one thing and making that a habit. Often people make the mistake of deciding that there's these 5 things that would be great for them to do. They go all guns blazing for a week on all of the different things, and then it falls apart because there's too many things to focus on. So it's better actually to take a layered approach. Let's say it was rating your PEMs. You just start with that, you get that going, you keep that going for 6 weeks. And once it's become integrated into your routine, then you could look at introducing the next thing. I think that the first thing to build is actually having a structure to your day and your week, actually defining the hours within which you trade, defining how long your pre-market prep will be, even having rules around maybe it is that you take 2 breaks during the trading window and you step away from the desk, or, some people add in doing some exercises just to refresh their focus, things like that. So if you can actually build that structure first, once that foundation's in place, it's easier to start adding in other pieces to that.
Yeah, and that cuts crosswise with the idea of, hey, I'm going to be a day trader. It's an easier lifestyle. I'm going to go and make some money and then do whatever I want to do in the afternoon, when the opposite is really true. It's like, no. You got to wake up at this time. You have to do A, B, and C at this hour. The freedom element is a little misleading.
I totally agree with that. There is the downside of having to be very disciplined and structured. The quicker that people can realize that that is a skill that has to be learned and that it's not as much time freedom as you might anticipate, then it's easier to figure out how to best work within that.
So let's shift just a tad bit toward anxiety. Now, some people feel this seasonally. Other people get anxiety periodically throughout the year. How important is it to recognize that you have anxiety, and what should you do about it?
Super important. There's like clinical level anxiety, which would be something that you'd be working with a psychologist for, and that it disrupts people's daily functioning. So when we're talking about anxiety here, I'd be talking about the type of just heightened anxiety that people might experience, isn't nice to experience, but isn't necessarily a huge problem for their day-to-day functioning. It's really important to be aware of how the person is feeling. So I always differentiate between the person and the performer. So the performer is the trader who is there to execute the trades and is performing under pressure, but you're also bringing the person to the market as well. And so that's the father, mother, brother, sister who has all the stresses of just normal day-to-day functioning. And that can include those moments of anxiety, whatever else, just from the daily stresses of life. But it's really important to actually manage that, both from the perspective of just personal well-being and fulfillment, but also from the perspective of the performer. Let's use the holidays as an example. So a lot of people actually experience heightened anxiety around the holidays, whether that's because they're spending more time with family where maybe there's strained relationships, or there's comparison going on. You're at family gatherings and people are asking how your job is going and you're trying to justify that trading isn't gambling, and things like that. That comes up a lot with the traders that I work with. So there can be heightened anxiety there. And if you're already heightened from the personal perspective in terms of challenging emotions, and then you go and enter the market, you're actually going in with your cup like nearly full of anxiety or pressure or stress. And so any small thing that happens in the market then can easily just tip you over. It's really important to develop self-awareness so that you are in touch with what emotions you're feeling at any one time, and when they're getting a little bit out of the range where you'd need to do something about them to manage them.
Like, I'm coming in the holidays and let's say I had a good year and I'm like, all right, I'm going to press the pedal to the metal. We're going to go out with a huge bang this year, Christmas presents for everybody. And then my behavior as a trader changes.
And that is a challenge actually that a lot of traders experience. It comes back to whether you're doing that because you're losing or doing it because you're winning. We all have hidden motivations as humans, and they're usually the things that create indiscipline in trading. Your logical mind thinks it's about just making more money, but actually it's about all these deep subconscious motivations that humans have, and they're projecting them onto the market.
That's interesting, because for me, and I'm going to do a self-diagnosis right here live, my anxiety, I don't think is in the physical act of trading, but I have all these other, you call them subconscious. They're not subconscious for me. It's like, okay, did I give the dog her medicine this morning? Is my pool pump going to be fixed before the big freeze? So I have all these little, these things in my head that I can't sometimes get out of my head while I'm supposed to be focusing on the trade.
And again, very common. I would say incorporating practices like mindfulness and meditation. So we can't always, it would be a personality transplant nearly to completely stop worrying worrying about those things. And it's very human. You've got a lot on your plate, you have to-do lists, all of that. It's about creating short windows of time that give your brain a rest, that allow you to recharge. So that could be 5 minutes of deep breathing or mindfulness meditation. There's a lot of research to say that that actually helps anxiety levels, helps calm you down, helps your focus and attention. There's loads of benefits to doing that. Sometimes people think it's black or white. I have anxiety or it's not there at all. But it's actually more about finding balance and just finding windows of time, little 5-minute windows where you give yourself a break from it so that you can recharge and then allow it to happen again.
Let's talk about burnout for a real quick second. So do most people recognize when they're burned out?
Absolutely not. No. And it's something I see all the time. The traders I work with are high achievers. If they're bothered working on psychology, they're usually like very motivated and disciplined in terms of doing everything they can to improve as a trader. So like I will see that they're burned out, but in their minds, what they're saying is, why can't I cover everything on my to-do list? Why amn't I being effective enough or efficient enough? Why amn't I getting it done? Why don't I have the results? So they're not actually sitting there reflecting and saying, I'm feeling really burned out and that's the thing I have to deal with. They're saying, I have all of these things I want to achieve and there's a gap between where I am and what I want to achieve. So how do I close it? Whereas the solution is actually working on the burnout, taking more off their plate, and that would actually free them up to perform at a much higher level. But it takes a bit of a leap of trust and a switch in mindset to see that doing less can actually produce more, especially in trading.
That was awesome. I appreciate your time today. Happy holidays and a happy new year.
I hope you do get the time to take that break and completely switch off from trading as well.
This presentation is for educational purposes only. All of the symbols, trading ideas, and live trading are for demonstrational purposes and are not recommendations or trading advice. Past performance may not be indicative of future results. All of the information and opinions expressed by third-party guests are their own and are not necessarily those of NinjaTrader, LLC. Trading futures involves substantial risk and may not be suitable for everyone, and trading futures can result in losses greater than the initial required margin. Traders should only trade futures with risk capital. Risk capital is money that you can afford to lose without jeopardizing your financial security or current lifestyle. You can find additional disclosure information on the NinjaTrader website.